chemistry, and living things. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are one of the four major classes of biomolecules. They play significant roles in different biological processes, from supplying and storing energy to providing structural frameworks for cells, as well as DNA and RNA. Carbohydrates are classified into three sections: the monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. First, let's have the monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates. They are referred to as monomers as they serve as building blocks for the larger and more complex carbohydrates like disaccharides and polysaccharides. Common examples of monosaccharides are glucose, ribose, and fructose. These three sugars can be found in many living organisms as substrates for ATP production. A good example of food that has monosaccharides is honey, as it is largely made up of both fructose and glucose. Next, disaccharides. Disaccharides are formed once two monosaccharides combine through condensation when a water molecule is removed from the pair. The covalent bond formed in this process is called a glycosidic bond. These bonds can break down into the base pair of monosaccharides through hydrolysis that returns the last water molecule. Disaccharides serve similar roles with monosaccharides as they also function as substrates for ATP production. A common household food that has disaccharides is ice cream. Like most dairy products, ice cream contains sucrose and lactose. And other forms of disaccharides found in different food are maltose, which can be found in food items like beer, bread, and potatoes, and trehalose, which can be found in mushrooms and other edible fungi. Lastly, polysaccharides. Polysaccharides, also called polymers, are long strings of monosaccharides connected to one another through glycosidic bonds. Unlike their smaller counterparts, polysaccharides are large insoluble macromolecules that can produce more than 10 monosaccharides if broken down through hydrolysis. Their insolubility and compact structure have made them ideal for short-term energy storage, especially as they are easily broken down into their base sugars. Pasta noodles contain starch, which is a type of polysaccharide made up of glucose. Now, other types of polysaccharides include amylose, amylopectin, and cellulose, which are found in plants, and glycogen, which can be found in animals and fungi. Lipids. Lipids are important fats that serve many purposes in our body. They act as energy reserves, insulate and protect important organs in the body, aid in hormone regulation, and help in digestion. Fat-rich food is not only high in caloric density, but it also tastes great. There are two types of lipids, the saturated and unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fats are predominantly found in food produced from plants such as vegetable oils, nuts, and seeds. We can tell the difference between the two types of fat as unsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature. They are considered as the healthy fats because they can improve blood cholesterol levels, ease inflammation, stabilize heart rhythms, and play several other beneficial roles. An example of unsaturated fat that can be found in the kitchen is extra virgin olive oil. An important type of unsaturated fat is the omega-3 fats, as they cannot be produced by our body and solely come from omega-3 rich food like fish, canola oil, and walnuts. Omega-3 has been associated with many health benefits such as lower risks of heart disease, reduce bone and joint pain, aid in fighting inflammation, and improve health in general. The second type of fats are saturated fats. Saturated fats are predominantly found in animal-based food but can also be found in plant-based food like coconut and palm oil. Unlike unsaturated fat, saturated fat is solid at room temperature. Saturated fat also gets its name from its chemical structure. It is made up of fatty acid chains that are saturated with hydrogen molecules. This makes them more tightly packed and harder to break down in comparison to their unsaturated counterpart. An example of this is butter. Butter, like most dairy products, is rich in saturated fat. This type of fat can also be found in food items like cheese, red meat, grain-based desserts, and fast food. Though it has been associated for years with many negative health effects such as heart disease, Recent studies have come to realize that this issue is more complicated than previously imagined. Saturated fats are perceived as generally harmful to your body if consumed regularly, as they have been found to increase LDL cholesterol in your body, which can clog and narrow blood vessels. Recent studies on the effects of this type of fat have found inconclusive results in the association of saturated fat consumption and coronary heart disease. A more harmful type of fat found in the modern supermarkets are trans fats. Trans fats are made by heating liquid vegetable oils in the presence of hydrogen gas and a catalyst. This process is called hydrogenation. Trans fats have been directly linked in lowering good HDL cholesterol and raising bad LDL cholesterol, creating inflammation and contributing to insulin resistance. Unlike the previous two types of fats, trans fats can be harmful even in small amounts. Now, governments and regulatory boards around the world have been working on phasing out trans fats in food since the 1990s, as it poses a major health hazard to its consumers. Next, lipids and detergents. Firstly, you can see that oil has been added to the clear container with water in it, and it did not mix. Now, when water and oil are added into a jar, they repel one another and are immiscible. This is because water is made up of polar molecules, while oil is made up of nonpolar molecules. The exterior of lipids are hydrophobic or water-hating, which repels the water molecules and prevent them from combining with the oil. Now, oil is less dense than water, making it float and collect at the top of the jar. The cohesive property makes oil attracted to oil and water attracted to water, which allows them to accumulate separately. Now, once detergent is added to the mixture, the oil and water seem to mix, forming an emulsion in the jar. This is because detergent attracts both water and lipids. So this can be analogous to the body's digestive system when consuming food. It is turned into energy. It starts when you take the first bite. Now, mechanically, our mouth physically breaks down the food through chewing, and the chemical digestion begins when we salivate. Saliva contains an enzyme, specifically amylase, that begins to break down carbohydrates into simpler nutrients that cells can use. From the mouth, it enters the pharynx and goes directly to the esophagus and onto the stomach. The stomach contains acid, and this gastric acid is made up of digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and other substances that are important for absorbing nutrients. Without these substances and enzymes, like our saliva, we cannot absorb nutrients and receive what our body needs but cannot produce, such as omega-3 fatty acids. Next, proteins. Eggs can be one example of food that is rich in protein. Now, proteins are made up of amino acids, wherein genes code these proteins to form the basis of living tissues, the building blocks of life. Now, proteins are also known as polypeptides, and this is because a protein molecule is made up of long chains of amino acids linked together through covalent peptide bonds. Now, a covalent bond is formed when a carbon atom from the carboxyl group of one amino acid shares electrons with the nitrogen atom of the other amino acid. Now, they are large, complex molecules that play many critical roles in the body. Part of the biological process, proteins catalyze reactions in our bodies, transport molecules such as oxygen, keeps us healthy as part of the immune system, and even transmit messages from cells to cell. Next, water. Now, in the beginning, you could see that I placed a water in the container and marked it with a blue ball pen, not that visible, but still there. And upon seeing it after, the solid form of water is not at the same level of the liquid form. Now, unlike most forms of matter, water expands when it transforms from a liquid to a solid through freezing. This can be explained through the hexagonal crystalline structures formed by the water molecules as they freeze that create more space between them, making solid ice less dense than liquid water. For the next part, you could see that I have poured water in a clear glass and added ice cubes after. Now, the ice floats, and ice cubes float on water as they are less dense than liquid water thanks to the hexagonal structures formed during freezing explained previously. This property of water has a major significance to marine life as fish and other living creatures that thrive underwater are protected from the surface by thick sheets of ice that float to the surface when they freeze. This physical barrier of ice that forms on top of bodies of water insulates the water below from the frigid temperature above and protects aquatic life from land dwelling predators. In response to this, some animals have evolved strategies to take advantage of or overcome this phenomenon. Polar bears have been known to smash through thinner patches of ice when hunting for seals and fish. Penguins, on the other hand, regularly make iceberg pit stops during fishing expeditions during mating season before they return to their nests. Now, many creatures that live in the Arctic and Antarctic regions of the world have called these large masses of ice home long before the dawn of mankind. Now, for the last part for water, I conducted the experiment of placing two identical cans, one filled with water, the other left empty, on a day that had a somewhat heavy overcast of clouds. So not much has changed in temperature that was observed for the whole duration. Although there was a gradual increase of heat for the can without water. And I hypothesized that the heat energy transferred from the sun to the empty metal can was directly absorbed and slowly heated the metal. The can filled with water, on the other hand, absorbed a similar amount of energy, but the heat was dispersed amongst the water molecules inside the can. On a hotter day, the energy transferred into the water might have been enough to evaporate some of it into the atmosphere. So, this experiment can be easily explained through thermodynamic equilibrium. It states that heat is transferred from the hotter object to the cooler object to satisfy the second law of thermodynamics. The metal can be heated up quicker than the water inside it, as metal has a lower heat capacity than water. The heat was then transferred from the hotter can to the cooler water until it achieved thermodynamic equilibrium. And the last part for this activity is about calories, vitamins, and minerals. So for this section, I will be showing my lunch for today. The snacks that I eat after lunch is still counted as lunch for me, so that I will be showing. So for my meal, I am having one big piece of pork tocino with half of my sister's barbecue, one piece of pork adobo, and 1 cup of rice. Though it's going to be 2 cups, I just did not film it for my second plate. My drinks is half of the raspberry sola iced tea, and for my snack, the not so snack, it's half a cup of oatmeal. Now, the total calories my lunch has, an estimate, is 803.1. And I calculated this using a website called nutritionix.com. They also have a app, and you just plug in the type of food that you have. So that's pork tocino, pork adobo, pork barbecue, rice, white rice to be specific, and oatmeal and sola. After this, on their website, I'm able to tweak the serving size based on whatever their conversion may be. And so for this meal, the rice, the sola, the meal, and the barbecue are rich in carbohydrates, while the pork adobo and pork tocino are rich in fat. Also, the barbecue is also rich in protein. Generally, my food has a little bit of calcium, iron, vitamin A, and vitamin C. So that is all. I hope that through this exercise, I was able to identify the different molecules that make up living things and demonstrate some principles that govern the behavior of these molecules. So keep safe and thank you very much.